Welcome to the first FGI podcast. My name is Tim Stark, and I'm a professor of civil engineering at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I am also the technical director of the Fabricated Geomembrane Institute, or FGI, at the University of Illinois.
And I'm Jen Miller, and I'm the coordinator of the FGI. Welcome to our first podcast.
So I'd like to start our first podcast with giving you a little history about the FGI and how it got started here at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Way back in 1998, the PVC Geomembrane Institute was an industry-based research group for PVC geomembranes, and they sought proposals from various universities to establish a connection or technical liaison with the PVC Geomembrane Institute. So in 1998, I wrote a proposal to the PVC Geomembrane Institute, or PGI, and luckily, my proposal was accepted, and the PGI started its affiliation with the University of Illinois. From 1998 until 2009, we operated as the PGI, and we conducted short courses. We developed and promulgated a material specification for PVC geomembranes. We conducted short courses. We conducted research on various aspects of PVC geomembranes, including air channel testing of PVC geomembrane seams, durability of PVC geomembranes, plasticizer molecular weight for PVC geomembranes, and a variety of other topics. From the beginning, I always wanted to expand the PVC Geomembrane Institute to include other materials, because I was working on a lot of other materials at the beginning, and PVC is just one type of geomembrane that's used in the containment industry. So after 11 years as the PVC Geomembrane Institute, I proposed that the group finally broaden out and include other materials that could be fabricated. And I'll describe fabrication in just a minute. So that took some discussions and some back and forth. Not everybody was happy with the broadening of the group, but in 2009, we created the Fabricated Geomembrane Institute instead of the Flexible Geomembrane Institute. Initially, I thought maybe we should just look at flexible geomembranes and its advantages, but John Heap of Colorado Lining suggested what we really do is we factory fabricate geomembranes, so we can do more of the work and processing in a factory environment instead of an uncontrolled field environment. That led to the Fabricated Geomembrane Institute. It was initially housed in Michigan, where the PVC Geomembrane Institute was created under the leadership of Fred Rowe of Environmental Protection, Inc. And in 2013, I incorporated the Fabricated Geomembrane Institute in the state of Illinois with the help of course, Jen Miller. And thus the FGI is incorporated in Illinois and based at the University of Illinois like the PGI was. So let me discuss factory fabrication very briefly. So the big difference and focus of the FGI is that we're interested in geomembranes and geosynthetics that can be prefabricated in a factory environment, which is more constant, uniform, predictable than the field. And we've seam the various rolls of geomembrane or geotextile in the factory, and then we ship the folded panels or rolled panels to the field. We unroll them or unfold them in the field and are able to quickly install the geomembrane for the containment application, because the majority of the seaming and testing has been conducted in the factory. And so that's our real emphasis. And I'll have a podcast a little later about some of the advantages and disadvantages of factory fabrication. So I'd like to turn it over to Jen Miller.
Okay, I like it. That's a great history, a recap of the FGI and PGI. Thank you. So before we go any further, I think our audience would like to learn a little bit about our resident expert, Dr. Timothy D. Stark. So can you give us a little background about yourself, maybe where you grew up, where you went to college, bachelor's, master's, PhD?
Okay, so I grew up in Newark, Delaware. Yes, that's not a typo. That is Delaware, first state to ratify the Declaration of Independence, over by Pennsylvania.
But you weren't present.
Just barely. It was just shortly before my birthday. Exactly. Grew up in Newark. So I attended the University of Delaware, in Newark, Delaware, of course, and obtained my Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from the University of Delaware. Upon graduating from the University of Delaware, I accepted a job with a major geotechnical engineering firm in downtown San Francisco, and worked there for about a year, maybe a year and a half, with the idea that I would eventually go to graduate school. It happened a little quicker than I thought it would, but by the next September, I was enrolled in the graduate program at the University of California at Berkeley, which was just across the San Francisco Bay from the consulting firm that I was working with. So I completed my master's degree at the University of California. I was certain I was going to go back and work for this consulting firm in downtown San Francisco, beautiful place. And I turned in my master's thesis, so I even did a master's thesis instead of a non-thesis option, because I was sure I was going to go back to work.
Oh, that's funny.
So I even wrote a little master's report thesis, went in to my faculty advisor, Mike Duncan, at the University of California, Berkeley, and he signs it, and this is great, and he says, now what? And this was a Friday afternoon. I said, well, I started Woodward Clyde Consultants on Monday. Have you ever thought about a PhD? Said, a little bit, but not much. And he said, well, do you have a minute?
Oh my goodness.
So that minute turned into about a half hour, and to make a long story short, I never made it back to Woodward Clyde Consultants. I finished my PhD and became a professor first at San Diego State University, and then within 2 years, maybe 3 years, I joined the University of Illinois and have been at the University of Illinois ever since.
Wow, that's great. Okay, so contrast a little bit for us. Delaware versus California versus Illinois.
Okay, that's not really fair.
I just like to torture myself sometimes.
Okay, so Newark was a great place to grow up. Small college town, much like Urbana. So Urbana is a lot like Newark.
Okay.
Very similar, except Newark was pretty close to Philadelphia and Wilmington, bigger cities, whereas Urbana, we're sort of out in the middle of the cornfields.
Right.
120 miles south of Chicago, so we're a little more isolated. So Urbana and Newark very similar college towns. Now, San Francisco, just for everybody that's listening, I have a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge on my wall, one of my walls in my office, just to put that in perspective. Just one of the great cities in the country, if not the world. Just absolutely loved San Francisco and still do. So
Great. Okay, so you told us a little bit about your master's thesis. What was your PhD dissertation on?
Okay. Told you a little bit about the master's thesis, which was on slope failures in the Berkeley Hills. Every year there are slope failures in the Berkeley Hills, and so I did a study on basically where they're occurring, size, and so on. So my PhD thesis dealt with the upstream slide in San Luis Dam, which was the major dam in the California aqueduct system. It underwent a very major slope failure in 1981, and that is the key to the entire California aqueduct system. So getting that dam fixed and put back into service was absolutely vital. So that led to my thesis on what was the cause of the failure and how effective the repair would be.
Excellent. So, and then you carried that research forward into your future research, or is that still the focus, or how has your research evolved through the years, and what are you working on now?
Yep. So that led to a lot of my research in slope stability and shear strength of soils and geosynthetics.
Okay.
So that would probably be my main area of research, is slope stability, both static and seismic stability of earth and other types of structures, all coming from my master's and PhD.
Great. Good. So I imagine you've taught a lot of different courses over the years. So can you tell us, like, maybe a sampling of some of the courses you've taught, or recall what you're teaching now, some of your favorites, most interesting courses, maybe?
For this podcast, at the University of Illinois, I have offered a graduate course titled Geotechnics of Landfill Design, also a graduate course on Introduction to Geosynthetics, and still offering a course on stability of embankment dams and slopes.
Okay.
This semester I'm teaching the undergraduate foundation engineering course, which is how to design foundations for different types of buildings and so on. And I also teach a graduate construction law class.
Fantastic. Any good stories on current or former students, or should we just not go there?
Well, there are lots of good stories, but given it is January right now, and actually a mild winter for Urbana, but one year, and my graduate class is usually at 8 a.m. in January, so it's really cold.
Really cold.
Really cold. But one student showed up every morning for my 8 o'clock class in January and February and March in shorts.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness.
He would walk in, it would be minus 10 degrees, wind chill really bad. His legs are absolutely red. His face really red.
Oh my goodness.
And he just insisted on wearing shorts.
Was he a good student? Was he there for the class? I mean, intellectually.
He was a good student, and usually after he thawed out, he was pretty
Even better.
Yeah, exactly. He would be pretty engaged in class, but you could see he was cold at least for the first 10 or 15 minutes. It was absolutely hilarious.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. That's funny. Okay, so that's great. I appreciate you giving us a little bit of background of you and where you are in your research right now. So tell us more about, so we've heard the history of the Fabricated Geomembrane Institute. So where is it today? Tell us about its existence and where it fits into the whole geosynthetics industry.
So right now, I think the FGI is going absolutely great, better than I even thought it was going to be when I expanded the PGI to the FGI. We have over 50 members. We have monthly webinars that are well attended. We offer short courses around the world, actually.
This is true.
Supervising research activities on geosynthetics here with our graduate students and external people to the U of I. So I think everything's going great, and we have the best membership coordinator of all professional societies here.
You're very kind. All right, great. So how about some of the resources that the FGI provides? Can you go through some of those? I know you mentioned, and I can help out here, I know you mentioned webinars, but I think one of our greatest resources is our website, and it can be found at www.fabricatedgeomembrane.com. And if you haven't been to it, I strongly encourage you to visit it. We put all of our webinars, the video, the slides, any reference materials that the speaker referenced or talked about in the webinar. We post all of that on our website that can be downloaded for free. And also we have an online PDH program. So for you engineers out there who are looking for credit, you can view and download our webinars for free and earn PDH credit. We started a new, I'm pretty excited about the safety tailgate series we started a few months back. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me about the website. So on the top menu bar, there's a button that says resources. This is where a lot of good information is. And right next to it is specifications and guidelines, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But under resources are our installation details for typical ponds, our webinar series that Jen just mentioned, our pond leakage calculator. So if you want to quantify the amount of leakage that you have without a geomembrane, this is a really good Excel spreadsheet that can help you with that. A geomembrane guide, equipment guide, a photo gallery of big projects, the laboratory and field testing videos, how the different ASTM tests that are required for geomembranes are performed. And then at the bottom of the resources are the various safety tips. Every month during our monthly member teleconference, we have a safety tip presented.
Yeah, and then we turn those into what we call a tailgate safety flyer. And so you can go onto our website and click on the safety page, and all of our safety talks have been turned into flyers. So you can print them out. You can, show them to, do a quick impromptu safety meeting with your people in the field or in the office setting. So we try to keep it as user-friendly and give our members and our audience as many things as we can.
Okay, so the other key menu pull down on the FGI website is the specifications and guidelines. So there are three groups of specifications and guidelines. The first is the FGI material specifications and guidelines. So under this are the different guidelines for different aspects of fabricated geomembranes. For example, the first one is identification, packaging, handling, storage, and deployment of fabricated geomembranes. Another is conducting air-lance tests of geomembrane seams. Then under that tab is also the material specifications we've developed for PVC and flexible polypropylene geomembranes. Then the next set of guidelines are the IAGI, the International Association of Geosynthetic Installer guidelines that we've created with the IAGI group for how do you install geomembranes. And then finally, some relevant test methods from the ASTM International.
That's great. Well, I think we should probably wrap up our first podcast. What do you think, Tim?
I think that's great.
So what do you see for our future here? What are your thoughts about future podcasts and where you'd like to see this series going?
So the next podcast could talk about the advantages of using fabricated geosynthetics in a variety of engineering applications. Next, I could cover some of the questions that I receive through our website that we get from engineers, regulators, and other people in the industry. A quick podcast on some of our current research results and current activities.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, as Tim just mentioned, if you go to our website, right on the homepage, there's a big box that says Ask the Expert, and it has Tim's picture on it. And so if you have a question, feel free to just type it in and we can address it in a future podcast, or you can email me directly. I'm Jen Miller, and my email address is fabricatedgeomembrane@gmail.com, and I can definitely get your questions into a future podcast, or just get you an answer, however you want to do.
Okay. Thanks for listening to our very first podcast, and hopefully we will see you soon on our next podcast.
Thanks. Bye-bye.